Oh, that's great. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 prakim Rambam. Hilchos Sha'ar Avos Hatumais Prakim Yutches, Yutes, Chaf, and thus making the siyum on these series. We are beginning with Perek Chai, Perek Yutches. Now, the Rambam is going to begin by telling us that the rule that we have been learning, that Safek Tuma B'Reshus Harabim, Sveikoi Toher. Safek Tama B'Reshus HaYachid, Sveikoi Tamai stands even when we have what we'll call compounded Sveikois, as the Rambam will explain what that means. Furthermore, in this chapter, we're going to start putting together rules that we learned prior to this general Safek Tuma B'Reshus Harabim Toher, Safek Tama B'Reshus HaYachid Tamei, and we're going to see that many of the rules that we learned earlier in the earlier chapters, they will override this rule, as we will see, and we're going to have in the 18th chapter, like we had in the 17th chapter, many cases where it's a doubt, but it's not a shakal doubt. In other words, it's not an equal doubt. And then things can change, as we learned already yesterday. We don't always say Safek Tamei B'Reshus HaYachid or Tamei. And the same thing in the other direction. Perek Shemoina Asar has 16 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph, says the Rambam. In other words, no matter what degree of sveikus you have, even if you have sveikus, you have compounded doubts, nevertheless, b'reshus harabim, the rule will stand tahor, and b'reshus hayachid, as we have been learning, we stand with the rule of tamei. For example, keitzad nichnas lamavoy. We're speaking, the mavi that we learned in Eruvin. So you have this private street known as a mavi that opens up to chatzeros. Every chatzer opens up to batim. A person went into a mavi, and we know that there is a source of tuma in one of the chatzeros. Now you're in the mavi, you don't know safek nichnas l'chatzer, safek nichnas. Now, by the way, even if nichnas, you don't know if you touched. We're getting there, but he's going to give another example. Or there's a tuma and a bias. Safek nichnas l'bayis avli nichnas. No, add to it. In other words, you're in the mavui. Maybe you went into the chatzar. Yeah, if you went into the chatzar, did you go into the bayis? It could be as an absent-minded tzaddik that's learning a chveis the whole time. He doesn't know. And vafilu nichnas safek shaloi hayasham safek hayasham. And the im time of hayasham be'esha nichnas. Maybe whatever is there, then there is the needed shiur to impart tuma safek einba. And the in time yeshba safek shituma safek sheina tuma. And even if it's tuma and it has the share safek naga safek naga. Now I know that someone can argue there's only one safek. Yes, I know. This guy Taka doesn't know. It was even if you were to verbalize all of these doubts, still in such a type of sveke case, still svekoi tamei shahamavoi reshus hayachid. Now note, Dovi, the Rambam didn't write that the bias is reshus hayachid. The tum is in the bias. The tum is in the chatzar. It's very important that the person, even on the tzad that he didn't enter the chatzar. The minimum is in the mavui. It's important that he's also in the reshus hayachid. And we're going to learn if there's other types of sveikas where maybe I put my hand in the house, maybe I didn't. We're not going to say safek tamei b'reshus hayachid. No, because I'm asking about me. I'm in the reshus harabim. That's why this is important. But still, there's so many sveikas. The tamei, gewaldig. Halacha beis, teishat sfardim. And don't think about the Teisha Chanoyos, guys. I know it sounds the same, but it's not. Let's go. The Tishat Sfardim, the Sheretz Echad, that's just a mashal. So as we learned, only the Shmoyne Sheratzim are matami when they're dead, not a frog. And this one Sheretz, and it is all the Reshus HaYachid. And the Naga Be'echad Mehem. Guys, this is going to be another great illustration of compounded sfekas. See, we learned, and we're going to learn about Safek Shakel. It's still called a Safek Shakel, even though one could have argued, come on, it's 9-1. Still, the Eini de Ezahu, the din is Sveikoi Tamei. Now, don't forget, we also learned, not only over here, that Kol Kavua Kemertz al Mertz. So there's rules. But in this case, you can call it a compounded suffix. The din will be your tummy. Or in the opposite direction. If there are 9 shratzim, 9 out of 10 are problematic in the Rishus Harabim. And there's only one Sfardeya. Beinei Rishus Harabim. And again, you for sure touched one. You simply don't know which one you touched. That's the compounded sfeikis in the opposite direction with Rishus Harabim, sfeikator. And zehaklau, kol sofek b'Rishus Harabim tor, ache yoyman it meisi b'vadai, kol sofek b'Rishus Hayachim tamei, ache yoyman vadi lo it meisi. Between Minchamayim yesterday, we just spoke on a concept that this idea, lahavdil, you have also in psychology, that when something is biyachid, when something is bad things, they thrive in the darkness. The more exposed something is, the more in the rabbim you make it, the more it's taught. But coming back over here to Torah, okay, that was Tama Ulai comparison. Now, lefikach atzmai sameis. Right now, atzmai sameis, guys, we learned they impart in tuma, and not only bamaga, right? Even an etzem kisoida of a human corpse, of a yid. Let's begin with that. Is matama also b'masa. The etzem nevela, it's not matama at all, not even bamaga. It's only, remember, only if the etzem is connected to the bones. So you have these 2 bones, they are b'rishus harabim. Or, for example, you have a gushma eretz tahira, which goes to the Holy Land, Eretz Yisrael, and you have gushim, a chunk of earth that either came from a beis hapras, which is tamim midrabanan, or it came from anywhere out of the Holy Land, which is tamim midrabanan, as we learned. Or you moved it. Now, moving is included in masa. Remember that. Or kazayis min ameis, kazayis min avela, another similar thing. Kazayis min ameis, not etzem. By etzem, guys, remember, atzomais are not matama ba'oil that quick. You have to have roiv binyan, the whole shedra, the whole gulgoilus, roiv hakav. But that's why he's giving you another example. You have a kazayis min avela is matama already ba'oil. And then you have a kazayis min avela. Kazayis min avela is tam b'maga, not the oil. And you went over one of them. Same thing with these doubts. Or Shnei Shevilin. Guys, don't get excited yet. We'll leave your excitement for the next chapter. The whole chapter is the Shnei Shevilin. And it's mamish to get excited. That's where we split the hairs the most. But the Shnei Shevilin. One, there's 2 paths. 2 paths. Whenever you learn Shnei Shevilin, my friends, B'Rishus Harabim. Just know the Shvil that Chazal spoke about is B'Rishus Harabim. Echot Toir v'echot Tamein. You don't know on which one you went. And you don't know if this guy was Tomei or Tar. Or you had to anashim one. Well, you know is Tomei. One you know is Tar. You just don't know which one you touched. Right? All of the cases that we spoke about is B'Rishus Harabim. So the rule will be Tahor. Halacha Gimel. Hamoitzi Meis. All right. Now we're going to give a case, my friends, where you don't have a vadai, but when we spoke about a suffix shakel, it's not shakel. It's so cut of lavadai that the Torah will say it happened. So you have a mace that's laying on the width of the road. And if the mace was sholem and he's going from one side to the other, right? Meaning, you found the mace. He's behind you. Now, was it possible for you to have walked around him? Yes. But if he's taking up the whole width, I get that word. It must be that Rambam is not speaking about a case where it's impossible, then pshita, Michael Mashmalon. The point is that there is a certain point that even though Safek Tamei B'Rishus Harabim, we keep on saying Tahar. There are certain cases where it's not as a Safek. What sometimes Chazal use the words, it's miskabel hadas. It's highly probable. Or the mace itself was meshubar u'mafaydak. It could be that you went in between the parts. Again, even though, I don't know how to put the numbers. Let's say if it's, I'm just giving a mushal. This is not precise. Safek shekel doesn't have to be 50-50. That's what the Rambam means. right? If there's a corpse in the middle of the road and the guy was cut into pieces, and there's a space to walk in between his thigh and his body, you can say that's like a 60-40 that you touched him, or even a 70-30. You're going to be tahor, even though that's still safek tameh b'reshus harabim tahor. But if he's complete, is there a possibility that you squeezed? Yeah, then already we don't say it. Maybe like 95-5. I don't know exactly how to put the numbers. Now, now we just, guys, we're going back to the beginning of the first series of Tara. If you remember that when a corpse is buried in an enclosed grave, interesting halachas, even if you have the poiseach tefach, there's a tefach space, nevertheless, the whole cave is tameh, and even if you touch the sides, you're tameh. And there, we don't need for the mace to occupy the whole cave. If the cave was the chol reicha v'derech, then the fact that he's cut into pieces doesn't change it. And whoever passed it is tameh. And here it's not only that if you walked over the grave, you're tameh, even if you touch the sides, you're tameh. Again, it must be, guys, that there was theoretically a little area for you to squeeze through, not pshita. Nevertheless, the point that Amma made, like we learned yesterday, that there is a certain limit where we don't say if it was a little bit possible, like the Hilchah Shabbos, we say it's not psikration because there was a smell. For Hilchah Shabbos, it works. It's not psikration, right? You're going to open up a packet of sugar and a guy didn't look. He can argue. I'm not saying you should be careful not to rip the letters, but you can argue that be passing like Rab Shimon, and it's not psikration. In most cases, it's not psikration. Okay, but here by sfekas, we don't say that. There comes a certain tipping point where even b'reshus harabim, you're going to be tamei. Halacha 4. Sheretz that's found in a maven. Right? Sheretz guides only imparts tumah b'maga. Remember, simple. The tamel mafreya upa. We learned yesterday a good rule. You judge things the way you find it. Now, yesterday we learned this rule a lot l'kula, that if you find something in a good state, kashas tumasan. Now let's go in the opposite direction. If you find now a sheretz, you don't know when it got there. We move it back. We say, since now there's a sheretz, we say that it must have been there until when? Until you made a proper bedika on that and that day, and you know you didn't have a sheretz then. And a proper examination doesn't mean you swept it. Because when people sweep, I relate to this, you'll miss many parts. Even if you swept it, but you didn't afterwards make it a bedika, there should not be any source of impurity. Even from before the sweeping, you don't say, if you swept it, if there would have been a sheretz, you would have swept it out. Friends is doing the sweeping. When you find the sheretz, yavesh, so since the dead sheretz is dry, it could have been there a day, it could have been there a month. We say you go back until the last bedika. If you find it moist, I mean, let's use common sense, which is not that common. But if you find it lach, then I mean, obvious, but the Rambam has to state the obvious. Now we already learned, guys, spittle from a zav is an avatumam. So if you have 2 spots of saliva in a reshus hayachid, one we know is tahor, and one is min harukin hanimtsoyim shugos rolim tumakamay. So we learned in chapter 13, not that we know that this spittle came from a zav, but Chazal made a takana that since it could have come from a zav, stam roik is tamei. And the nagaba echad, you know you touched one of these salivas or you moved it, which is probably more common. Who's going to touch saliva? But when you walked, you know that you pushed it. And guys, the zav is matama b'masa, hesed, right? Hesed of the zav. So now listen to this. Toilin olavas hatruma. If you then touch truma, we're not going to burn it, but it's going to be toilin. Why don't you burn it? What are the 2 sveikas? First of all, could be batar nagas of benimtza. I know that Chazal said that when you find saliva, you don't know who it came from. We presume it's tummy, but that in itself might not be tummy. This is not like halacha aleph. And halacha aleph, there was a doubt, Dovi, whether the tumah was kishir. That's different. here we know this alike. It's a tuma that Chazal were goyzed because of a suffix to begin with, compounded now with another suffix. You're still going to say Tomei, but it's amazing. Eloma, you're toiling and not surfing. That's wow. I just want to, guys, if you remember, it was in chapter 13, guys, and Perek Yud Gimel, that was easy. Perek Yud Gimel, Allah Yud Gimel, the Rambam concluded that there are 6 sfeikos for which you're side of the Truma. One of them was Roik. Or if not for the sfeika, people think, well, anyways, there's no, certain sfeikas are so strong that the Chazal said to burn it. Now, if you compound the suffix, toilet, that's the word. Now let's move this into the public domain. If they were dry, guys, it can't be entirely dry. Why not? Because spittle that's dry, it loses its status of spittle. Dry means that when you touched it, right, it's not going to attach itself to you. What is that called? That's called teifeach almanas latfiach. Remember these words. These words I use them a lot. Okay. And the naga be'echel mehem sveikotohar. Sveikotohar. Why is that, guys? Because Safik tuma b'reshus harabim sveikotohar. That's the rule. Now, no se'echel mehem toilin olav. Why? Because when you lifted it up, who are you? You're not a Reshus Harabim. Even though you are standing in a Reshus Harabim, once it's on you, Sharei Mishin Nasa'oi, Enamun of Reshus Harabim. Cheinem Hoya Echon Emlach, V'nitla Boy Haroik Halach, Toilin Olav. The moment, no, it's now Yechap, why he said Neguvim, because if it's Neguvim, meaning that even when you touch it, the moisture doesn't go on you. The only time you can claim it's on you if you carried it. If it's wet, even if you touched it, what happens then? It goes on you. When it goes on you, you can't say it's b'reshus harabim. So it's under Reshus Hayachid. Now, since we have a suffix and it's really a suffix, it's a suffix whether you touch something that to begin with that's halacha hey, you're not certain. This is Perek Yud Gimel. That even though you can say the whole thing is a suffix, no, that's one of the shisha sfeikas. Surfing al vasatruma, like a beis apras, one of the other 6. Even though it's Reshus Harabim, and even though that, guys, there are certain rules that trump the suffix Tamei b'Reshus Harabim. The whole Beis Apras is Reshus Harabim, as will be defined in today's final chapter in Perek Chav. Halacha Vav. Mishi yasher b'Reshus Harabim. You're sitting in the Reshus Harabim. Ubo echad, and someone came ahead and stepped on your clothing. Right, you're sitting on your El Al flight. That's the minig over there. Someone stepped on you, on your clothing. Or someone has spitted near you, and you touched v'naga boy haroik. So al rukai, for the spittle of someone whom you don't know, which is a dal dovi surfing a satrum. Again, that's the Perek Yud Gimel. But the al bigadov, from the same guy that stepped on your clothing, the same guy spit on you. Roik, surfing, begadov. Now we say roif. Im roif for ir atameim. Only then do we say that your begadov is midras. The im roif for ir tohirim arehu tohir. Even though it came from the same person, even though it's the same suffix. Welcome to Torah, Gavaldik. But that's the way it works. Chazal makes certain takanas, and things do not travel on the same track. Halach Zayin, Misha Avad Lekeli, and guys, underline the word Avad. Key is that you lost it. Key is that you lost it. And then you find it b'Reshus Hayachid. So what do we say? We say Hariyot Tuma Midras. Why do we say Tuma Midras? Because how did it get here? Who's Zava Nida? Nida brought it here. She sat on it. A goy midrabaran. These things could have happened. And the Tomei to be mace. How did it get here? Maybe they got Tomei mace to move it. And you found the Reshus Harabim, which there were more lenient. So then it depends. If you lost it by day and you found it on that same day, you're tahar. avad by yom motzai b'layla, or if you lost it by night and you found it by day, or you lost it by day and you find it on the next day, which means it was overnighted. The moment it was overnighted, we say that it's tamei midras. Cause haklal, kol shavar alayla, even though it's b'reshus harabim, safek tamei b'reshus harabim tar. No, by night, or even some of the night, we are afraid that what? That someone was someone who's tamei on the level of midras, sat on it, leaned on it, and therefore not only is it tamei, but it's tamei on the level of an av. Okay. Interestingly, and by the way, when he says tamei, I just want you to know that the tamei does not mean tumas meis. Everything has its own rule. We are metamed b'midras, but we're not metamed b'tmei meis. Interesting. Okay. Halacha ches. Now, halacha zayin was when you lost it. Now, if you deposited it down, or you put it down, you were going to get it, and for a moment you forgot that you put it down. That's not like losing it. Losing it means that what you didn't know when it left you. Here we're more lenient. Then here, again, a niach is better than losing it. So therefore, even b'reshus hayachid, we won't give it this rabbinic tamei meis. But here already, b'reshus hayachid, there is a tamei midras, b'tamei tamei meis. Mepnei ma lo yichmiru b'sheicheach umaniach kema'abed, because she'ein hadavar matzi tamud. And the whole thing is about fear that maybe an isha, maybe a goy, maybe people that have these tumas sat on it, and like gazru alav. Halacha 9. Hama abed. If a person loses an article, obviously we're speaking about a chaver, and you find the article that you lost inside your house of the chaver. In other words, what will be the chashash? That a goy or that a isha went into your house and made it midras? Why would they enter your house? It's your house. It's not shchiach for them to be in your house. Good. Point is, here again, that's another great example. It's so unlikely. Who would enter my house without permission? So unlikely that even though it's a suffix, and normally we say that if you ma'abed, we made it tamei everything, and it's b'reshus hayachid, makes sense. How did someone? The whole chashash is that a goy or an isha, or a zav. I'm saying, but why in your house? Halacha yud. Hasheteach kelim b'reshus harabim. But you're spreading kelim b'reshus harabim. Harei elu tohayrim. I just want to add something. L'chayra, it's when loy over halayla, right? Because that's what we learned before. That even b'reshus harabim, if over halayla, there's more chance that it became tum. B'reshus hayachid, tamei. That's the whole fort. Safik tamei. Shema nogumem tameim. However, if you were spread out your utensils and you were meshamed, then tohayrim. Notlu b'halach laviyam, then tameim. Why is that? Because since when it fell down, while you were going to get it, you were not guarding it. That moment, automatically there's a tumah on it. And you found it even by Yoim. Then we say midras v'tamei meis. K'may shebayanu. Vayter halacha yudal. Because what's the difference between?
This part of Naflu?
Not biased. That's a difference. No, the logic of halacha tes is that it's in your house. And here it's b'reshus hayachid, that's not your house. That means it's more shchiach for people to be there. Very good. Halacha yudal. Shoita achas be'ir. All you need is one shoita. Oy nachris. Kol haruken shebe'ir b'cheskas tuma lo'olam b'chol makam. Oh my God. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because of the rule, kol kavua kemechzal mechzal. That's what kavua means. Okay? Halacha yud beis. And once it's kavua, the Chazal made a takana, guys. Again, that's not safek tamei b'reshus. They made that's tamrukin is tamei. Halacha yud beis. Misha darsa ishal begada, of a woman is trampled on your clothing. Oishi yashva imoi. Basvina, she sat next to you, and I was speaking about little boats. Im makirasoi shuechel truma. Not if you know her, guys. If she knows you, then we say the presumption is she took precautions not to lean on your clothing, not to touch you, Caleb to hide him. And if she doesn't know you, then we don't say Tameh. Ask her, how beautiful. Now, it's not such a comfortable question. The rabbis asked me something inappropriate. He's gonna, are you a nida? I don't know how to ask this nicely, but okay, Allah Yud Gimel. The Omad. Here, you, in other words, what's the fear? The fear is that while you slept, right, maybe someone trampled on the edges of your clothing. We say, Ke'elaf Tohigan. You know why? Safek Tuma B'Rishus Harabim. That's the word. Allah Yudam. Noga B'Rishus Harabim Echad Balayla. You touch someone at night. And what don't you know? You don't know whether you touched a living person or whether you touched a corpse. What a world they lived in. And then, Ubashachar Oma, then you find that the person next to you is mace. So just like we learned by the Sheretz, right? That when you were, until the previous, you were Machabed, you were Boidik the house, we say it's Tameh. Right now we say Tameh. Because right now the person is a mace. Maybe Taki, he died after I touched him. Maybe. Safek Tameh B'Rishus Harabim Sfeikato. Not over here. Now, the Chazaka, he's mace. Shkol Tuma is Keshas Mitziyasim. Now, if you saw him alive at night, even though you find a mace, now we can argue you saw him alive and you saw him dead. Now it makes it back into a normal suffix. And since that happened with the Rishus Harabim, Gavaldik, now your turn. Halacha Tezvav. Hamasukin. B'Rishus HaYachid. A person is very ill and he fainted. The emes is you're not allowed to touch him. What happened was and he was in the Rishus Harabim in such a state. And then they brought the same person back into the Rishus HaYachid. So I want you to know that mamish, and people touched him here, people touched him there. So we say that while he was in the Rishus HaYachid, Sveikoi Tameh. While he was in the Rishus Harabim, Sveikoi Tar. You have to appreciate what we're saying. He was in the Rishus HaYachid. Why are we saying Tameh? He died. So then, and you already then you brought him to the Rishus Harabim. Whoever touched him is Tar. After he died, that's the way halacha works. And there were many groups that were maschalkas tachtov. At the end, they find them to be mace. Why? Because everyone was carrying him from here to there throughout the Rishus Harabim. This is so amazing. Halacha Tazayim. And while this person is talking, what's the word in English? I asked you for the time, not for the weather. He was spitting. Then it starts, if spittle was coming out of his mouth. Now, don't forget, sinoida is matama, spittle is matama, minimum amount. What's the issue here? Now, this guy is tamei. We know he's tamei. Did his saliva go all the way into the pit? So let's go back to some common sense. If the bird is oil, which means that right around the bird you have oil. You know what the nature of oil is? If spittle falls on oil, it will slide further. So we say it fell into the bird. Now, guys, I know that still, B'Rishus Harabim, you don't know, you'll be matayed, but B'Rishus HaYachid, you're going to say that it's already a proper suffix. But if the opposite, if the bird is made out of wine, I want you to know that when they make wine, they put a rim, they do something to make sure nothing goes into it. Not only is it not slippery, but it's more protected. So now we say, even B'Rishus HaYachid, because the sfas haboyer, the border that you have around the bird of yayin is koiletes. That's the way people build it. Now, and by oil, they didn't even attempt to do it because oil is slippery. So you do take this type of science into account, and sometimes you're not going to apply the normal Safek Tumah B'Rishus Harabim, Safek Tumah B'Rishus HaYachid. Perek Tisha Asad is a relatively short chapter. Not only it's four halachas, and if you remember, we learned a few times the Shnei Shevilin that's quoted throughout Gemara. If you want to understand exactly where we draw a line, That will be a phenomenal chapter to learn. Both liktanim or l'gdolim, and no matter where you're at, it's going to wow you. And one of the things we're going to learn from this chapter is that the way you ask the question to the Rav will have a lot of influence on how the psak din will turn out. Even though everyone is honest, we're not speaking about scenarios where someone is wording it in a crooked way. But as we'll see over here, mamish, what is focused when the issue comes to the Rav, even if at the end he'll know the full picture. Sometimes everyone will be tahar, sometimes everyone will be tamei. And let us begin. Perek Tisha Asar, halacha al. Shnei Shevilin. We spoke out in the last chapter in Perek Yud Ches. And then Rambam he threw in as Shnei Shevilin, just to remember, guys. A shvil means a path. Halachically, it means a reshus harabim as far as our halachas are concerned, because we are continuously learning the rule that Safek Tamei, B'Reshus Harabim, Sveikoi Tar, and that will be key. Echot Tamei ve'echot Tar. One path is Tamei. Now, how is one path Tamei? Yaron, you have a grave, there's a grave that's buried under the width of the whole path. Here we're speaking about a scenario that there is one path that when you walk from here to there, if you walked over the one that had the grave, vadai, you walked over a grave and you're tummy. Now, there's only a grave buried under one of these two paths. I don't know under which one. Let me word it like this, guys. I know which path I walked on. I just don't know which path is the path that was built over a grave. One scenario. And after I walked over one of them, everyone is God-fearing. I know I got a problem here. I also went to Cheder and I learned this rule that we're learning right now, that whenever there's a doubt of Tumah B'Reshus Harabim, Sveikotar, Lachatchila go to the mikvah. But Sveikotar means that I'm going to be ruled tired. And I went ahead and I prepared some foods that if I'm Tamei, I ruined it. I prepared a Truma, in Yerushalayim, I prepared Kachim. I did something that can mess it up. But one second. Look at this next nuance. Those foods were eaten. It's very important to get this halacha to know that we're speaking about a scenario where batch number one of food is already eaten. Now, everything was done so far okay. Because I didn't even ask a question because I know the rule. Safek tuma b'reshus harabim sveikoi tar. The food, therefore, is tar. And it was eaten. Now, the eaten is important. You'll get to it right in a moment. And not only that, then I decided, you know what? Even though Safek tuma b'reshus harabim sveikoi tar, lechatchila be machmer. So I'm going to do now lechatchila. Vehiza shlishi ushvi. Now I'm completely taught. It means even if I became, all of this is important to build up. And now he walked over the other path. Again, he knew the suffix was never which path he walked. The Rambam was wording means I never knew which one to start and which one to stop. And now I made taharis. So then the din is harei taharis. Why is it taharis? Here's the key. Because I underwent purification in between. Make no mistake, if I went over path A and then I went over path B, there's no shaila regarding me. But here we say, even though another nakuda, those taharas are not be'en. The first taharas were eaten. If those taharas were be'en, as we'll see, that can change the halach. The person is tahar, and the foods, even retroactive. A guy, you did not eat tuma, the tuma, taharis, safek tamei tahar. You have another safek tamei b'reshus harabim. Now let's go back. That will be the nakuda. What does that mean, my friends? One of them is vaday tamei. So once the Rav knows objectively, there is two piles of food. One is vaday tamei. You know what you say by taris? We say elu ve'elu teluyos. Why? Shebevadai she'echad min hataharis tamei. And I want to add something. Even if you did not ask the Rav bebas achas, as we'll see soon, that also plays a big role. If I gave the story, and I'm not even asking on both, when the Rav hears this story, he must paskin. Both foods are teluyos. Now, one second. What about the person? tahar. Why tahar? Because he went to the mikveh in between. So now so if he was tamei, could be he's tahar. Could be the first path had the tumah. Could be, and for that he was matayed himself. So now he's tahar, and safek tamei b'reshus harabim sfeikoi tahar. Now let's go right. Now more than that, the im loy tahar ben tayim, if he did not go to the mikveh, and both foods are be'en, now we say like this. Look how it changes. The first foods tuluyos. How crazy is that? You know, 1 second. By the first foods, you can argue. Safek tamei b'reshus harabim sfeikoi tahar. The fact that now I walked over the other shvil, that means now I am vadai tamei, that ruins the first. But not sarfais. Tuluyos. And bahashniyos yisarfu sharei intimes bevadai shezeh tamei hu mipnei shalach b'shnei hashvilin. Now the same in another case. Same principles in another case. Everything has to be b'reshus harabim because the beginning is okay only because of safek tumah b'reshus harabim. Tzveikoi tahar. And ve'ein surasim ikeres. You don't know which one is which. You don't know which one is a sheretz, which one is a tzvardeya, and you touched one of them. Again, that's a classic safek tumah b'reshus harabim, and you made taharos, and it was eaten. And you went to the mikvah, same thing. However, if the first taharos are be'en are here, even if you did not ask the basachas, then the first are teluyos and vashnias yisarfu. Same. The emes you have to stop here and take this in. But ein lanu zman. Let's go weiter. Halacha beis. Now, shnei shvilin gets better. Now a different halacha. Two shvilin. Yaakov came at the perfect time. Echad tami ve'echad toy. V'halach be'echad mehem. Again, you don't know which one you went over, and you made taharas. So what's the din? What did we learn until now? If you were now to ask it of, based on the rule of safek tumah b'reshus harabim sfeikoi tahar, even though lechatchila you should taivel yourself lechatchila, like beyond the letter of the law, but everyone is taught. Now so in halacha aleph we spoke out the beautiful difference if the food is be'en. Both foods are be'en, but two different people. So here is where we're going to be machalek how the question is asked for the Rav. If everyone asks separately, what? Tahar based on safek tumah. Ooh, that's different. Or even if only one guy came, but one guy came and says, Rav, I'm asking for you and my friend. What is the din about us? That's like you came together. But he has to word it because even if one guy is asking for both, if he asks separately, it's going to be like coming separately. He's asking zusammen that shnayim hayinu, ub'shnei ashvilin holachnu, u'shnei taharas asinu. Now, hari shnayim nisrafa, shnayim temeim, u'tahari sha'asu. Guys, not teluyos, nisrafis. So in halacha aleph, what did we say? Even when you have no tahar in middle, the first one teluyos, the second nisrafis. Here, we don't apply the first and the second, even though there is a first and a second, because for each person it's the first. For each person, and the din is not teluyos, nisrafis. The Rambam doesn't, like in halacha aleph, he spoke about mace and then he spoke about sheretz tzvardeya. Same thing over here. It has nothing to do with the chumrah of tamei mace. Ketzad, the Rambam speaks it up. Shnei karim. We know echad tom v'echad tar. It's even less than a sheretz. I take it back. It's even more kal. In other words, guys, if food is tamei, what's the din of the food? The din is only a rishon, right? The max it can be. And if you eat it, what's the din? Midrabanan. If food cannot be metam a person, if you eat it, chatzi pras, you become tama midrabanan on a level of a sheni. Same thing. And you make taharos. Now, If I midrabanan become a sheni, that's the din. So then, if I make taharis, even only truma, I'm gonna pass the truma. Okay. Same thing. Even the shalosh zachar shneim tohoidim. Why? Mipnei shehem safek divrei soifrim. The Rambam wants just to make a little point over here. Guys, halacha aleph and the first part of halacha beis is b'reshus harabim. No, it's the first step. The first step was safek tamei b'reshus harabim. That's why we can be lenient. Here, the Rambam, when he's speaking about someone ate it, the truth is that's even if you ate it b'reshus yachad and a chanami, because we already learned above this type of rabbinic safek to begin with, this type of midrabanan. Even b'reshus hayachid, also, if there's only one safek, then you can be lenient. The point is, continuing in halacha beis, that if they both came together, or even if one person came but he asked zuzamen, oy sheshol shinshol hachaveiri, then shnei tmeim is safek. V'taharoisam nisrafois shaharei vaday achas mehem tmeya. Again, we don't even say that the first. Both are nisrafos. Now, afilu kikar echad tamish nisar b'mei kikar istohiden. The Rambam is bringing as a proof that you say not only to lois but nisrafos. Another example: 1 in 100. 1 in 100. You know what the din is? So, first of all, you don't have bittul. You only have bittul when it's 100 to 1. No, you don't have bittul at all. You don't have bittul at all by tuma. And now, not only to loyos. Where did we learn that, guys? Also in Perek Yud Gimel, Halach Yud Gimel, when the Rambam spoke about second time today, the shisha sveikos that you burn. So if you look over there, the Rambam didn't speak about kikarim and kikarim. I think it was spittle, made aglaim and made aglaim. But the Rambam spoke about tarovis. It's the same thing. The Rambam said over there that even though there's a tarovis, there's a safek. When it comes to tum and tara, not only are we machmer, but we burn. Halach Gimel. Wow. Kikar tamei shenesarei b'tisha kikaris tahoirim. We just said right now, what will be the din? All of them should be burnt. You know why all of them should be burnt? Because when you take out one kikar, right, you know that in this batch, one of them is tamei. You don't know which one this is. You got to burn it. But 5 people came, that's just an example, and they ate chamisha kikaris mehem. And by the way, it doesn't have to be 5 people. It can be one guy eating 5 loaves of bread. Just normally, you don't find one person that can eat 5 sandwiches. So everyone ate one. But that was at one time. Now, you have what's going on over here? When the second group of 5 comes, you know what they can argue? It's different. They can argue that b'chlal, there's no tumah here. When you have a mixture and we're very machmir by taroives, that's because here there's something tummy. Bevadai, I just don't know on which bread. But now, so even though the first ones are tamei, this is the tumah midrabanan, because when you eat something that's tamei midrabanan, you become tamei. Oh, here, but here we say that they're all tamei. And as we just quoted from the end of Perek Yud Gimel, Halach Yud Gimel, that Chachamim said that for a taroivis, even by tum and tara, you burn, but you don't take it to the next batch. But v'hachamisha anoshim u'achroinim tohirim, because they can say that you're toilim b'rishonim. Okay, now halacha daled, final halacha of this chapter. Shnei shevilin, back to the shnei shevilin, and one is tummy, one is tahar. Shmuli, you have 2 paths. Under one of them, there is a grave that not shayach for you to have walked around it. You for sure walked over it. You just don't know under which road. And but here the beauty is who walked, not 2 people that are tired. One person that's tired and one person that's tummy. Or one person that's not tummy. One person that's only tummy on the level. To begin, it's such a little doubt that if he were to touch Truman Kachim, only toilet. I feel like a toloi. You know what the halacha says? Halacha says that what? This is all because of the rule, guys. Safik Tomei B'Rishus Harabim. I want you to know that. Sveikoi Toy. But maybe it's equal. Okay, we're going to say that the Tomei walked over the Tomei, or the Toli walked over the Tomei, and the Tar walked over the Tar. Wait.
Does that mean that if these 2 paths were in a private domain, that you would not say this rule?
100%. Then, if these two paths would have a din of a reshus, for sure. Now, this is based on the din of Safek Tumah b'Reshus Harabim. Remember, Shnei Shevilin is a Reshus Harabim in the Mishnais. V'oimrim zehatoyr halach b'shvil hatoyr, and therefore v'harehu b'toharasai, and v'zehatoli halach b'shvil hatomei. And the chiddush here is, even if they're coming and asking together, and that makes all the difference in the cases until now. But because before one of them will be tamei, here one of them was already tamei, so we can be toilin atami b'tamei v'atoyr b'toyr. How great is that? And now we are beginning, whoever's joining us right now, to learn the final Perek of Hilchos Sha'ar Avos HaTumos. It's going to be a Gavaldik Perek. The Rambam is going to speak out something, write more details. We mentioned it a few times already, that the Reshus Harabim for Hilchos Shabbos will be a Reshus Harabim for Hilchos Tumah. But something that's a Reshus HaYachid for Shabbos won't always be a Reshus HaYachid for Tumah, because don't forget the whole din that Safek Tamei or Safek Tamei Reshus HaYachid Sfekoi Tamei is learned from the case of Saita, right? That but the whole Tumah of a Saita is because they were alone. Alone meaning there were only two people there, him and the her. So you can have a Shabbos Reshus HaYachid.
Well, there was the witnesses also. I mean, that would be.
If there'll be a witness, Danny, then it's no longer the Reshus HaYachid. That's the whole point. The whole din that she's tamei until she drinks. If there was even only one witness, we learned. Remember, the aid ainba, and if there's one aid because of raglaim lodavar, then she can't even drink. She's tamei avadai. Yeah, the case of the Torah Saita is when there was no one else there. Now, I want you to know that Rambam is going to give other cases. You can have a Reshus HaYachid for Tumah. Don't say anything that's a Reshus HaYachid or Tumah is Avada Reshus HaYachid for Shabbos. Also not. It will give cases. Something can be a Reshus HaYachid for Tumah because it's a very secluded area. There's only two. There's no one there, basically. There's no one there. But it can be a cardinalist for Shabbos. We're going to give examples. No, it's different rules. By Shabbos has to do with mechitzes and taka, even if it's not a Reshus Harabim, but it's a cardinalist. The Rambam is going to give all these cases just to make it clear. It's about the doubt having in a place. And don't forget what we learned yesterday. There has to be a yesh boy das lishoel. That's key. But if you have the yesh boy das lishoel and it's in a complete secluded place, that will be the Reshus HaYachid for which we're learning the general rule that Safek Tumah b'Reshus HaYachid Sfekoi Tamei. We're going to learn that Devarim Sheheim b'Reshus Harabim Harei Heim Kireshus Harabim. We'll see what that means in a moment. And the Rambam is going to conclude Vesech Mesaimen B'Toiv with the big klal that Kol Shehu Derech Hiluchai Tar, as we'll see in a moment.
Even 20 people in a closed room, it's just the Yachid, it's considered just a
Sure, even 3 people, not 20 people.
Completely different term. It's just
a complete different term. That's what we got to emphasize this again and again and again. And that's going to be the Ikar of Perek Chab. The beginning of it will be to emphasize this. Perek Esrim has 13 halachas. As at the Yud Gimel Midas Harachmim. This is so good. Halacha al. Kol Makoim Shehu Reshus Harabim Le'inyan Shabbos. If that area will be defined as a Reshus Harabim, right? It's 16 amas wide. Even if no, we presume someone is there. We presume, it's an area where people are there. Very good. Le'inyan Shabbos. So then Kachu Reshus Harabim Le'inyan Tumah. Now halacha beis. Arba amas. There are smuchais l'Reshus Harabim. Hareim k'Reshus Harabim le'Tumah. Even if you are in a halachic Reshus HaYachid, because a lot of people are there without a wall. And v'chein karmelis. Remember the different types. Ke almana. Nishtahen, nishtahen. Like the yam. Or an itztavanis. Part of the Reshus Harabim, if you remember, it's not covered. Even if an area is tezayin amas. But if it's covered, it doesn't have a din of a Reshus Harabim. Doesn't matter. It has a din of a Reshus Harabim for these halachas. They are the Reshus Harabim Tumah because if a lot of people are walking there. The shuk in Yerushalayim, I think it's covered. They're not covered. My kids just took me there now. It's covered. The shuk, the famous shuk in the Darton. I thought I made that mistake. I went to Machniyat. I went to the shuk. They told me you didn't go to the shuk. Machniyat is not covered. The shuk is covered. Now, Yesham Halacha Gimel Yesham Mekaymo. I said it's mamish a Reshus HaYachid for Shabbos, not only a karmelis. He gives an example. Shvilim hamifulashim, the Shnei Shvilim, because you have paths that are leading to shichin, leboiris, or legitois. In other words, there are walls on both sides. Walls on both sides. Elama, the opening from one exit, right? In the exit, people can walk through there. And vahabika, even if it's mukev gader b'yemaisachama, and that's going to be important. Why is that? There's a get that I'll tell you why. Because you know what people do b'yemaisachama? They harvest whatever is in there. No one sends one or two people to harvest. When you have to harvest, this amount of harvesting, you send a bunch of workers. The people there. There are people there. And this is, by the way, this is a real Reshusa Hayachid. Or Basiliki Malachim. He teaches these big spaces where the carriage drivers would stay. Shubinyan Rachav, Harbe, La'amay by Anshe HaMerkava. And the yesh like psachim harbe psuchim l'shus harabim. Guys, there are 4 walls. The doors are not the breaches bigger than 10 amas. In other words, it's a hilcha Shabbos dikar l'shus hayachan elama. Everyone, all of the chevra have the right to move in there, and people are coming, people are going. V'hapoiron, what's a poiron? Uhabinyan hagadol. That not only are there various doors, but there shnei psachim zeh keneged zeh. And people de facto are using this inner space as a, what's it called, a shortcut. You know exactly what you're not allowed to do to a shul, right? The point is if you have a location that the fact is many people use, that's to your question. It's not about when I had that Suffolk, no, it doesn't matter. It's an area that there's easy access. It has a din of a Rosh Hashanah. That go down to the Yama, to the Nahar. Here we say, even if they are Gedurin Mikan Mikan. But if Verabim Mitavsim, if people jump over the fence, how many times do we know what happens? No, someone fenced it off, but the fact is people have to get to the sea. No, it's the need of getting to that location is so large that it just became that people are played together. They didn't even break the fence, but people, I know, you go here and you jump over the fence. That's it. It's no longer the Shusayachet for Hilchastum. Or the Habi Moisois, certain pillars, Amerchetzois, all of these areas, or a pillared area, Harehem Kirishusarabim Latuma. Many people are goydis instead of a bimois, they're goydis merchatzois. A bathhouse. He's trying to point out it's areas that are privately owned, and it's not even a Shabbos is also not about privately owned, but it's closed areas. Doesn't matter. A public bathhouse. If that's what the Rambam meant. Okay. So it's 2 different things. Another great example. It has in the Beis Hamikdash. You're kidding? You can carry there. So you have sometimes that the roofs of the houses were relatively low. Remember those roofs right near the Rosh Hashanah. People would walk on the street, but if they would schlep their merchandise over the gagois, such a thing happened. Even though they are private property, they are on top of your house. Still, Rosh Hashanah l'tuma. Halacha hey, hagina, a garden. So now it depends. Now we're talking about a garden. If the owner makes sure that it stays guarded, even though it's private property that's closed from the sides, people are not comfortable to walk into a chutzner. People used to live a lot under chutzner. The whole Hezekiah, Baba Basra Sugyas. People did things on the chutzner that you do today in your house because the houses there were tiny. But a gina is already, it's not a field, but it's a gina, somewhere in between. Then the Shus Rambam Latuma. The Chain Basilike Gedoyla. Obviously, it's not what the Rambam spoke about before. Basilika Hamalachim. That was even bigger. So it depends. When the doors are open, Shus Rambam Latuma. Here it depends on the time. You know what Lakol means? Even for Hilchas Shabbos. Like we know, many mechitzas, right? The whole study of Eiduvin, right? Do the city gates, are they open or closed at night? That will make a big difference. Halachavav. Habika mokafes goder, if a valley, a whole valley. In the valley, you have many sodas. The ganze Zach is closing with the fence. So here, bimois hakshamim, What's in Yemais Shamim, guys? During the planting season, people have the menschlichkeit of not using it as a shortcut. You know why? Because if I just planted my tvua, you're going to walk on top of it, you're going to ruin it. So then, it's a Reshus HaYachid L'Shabbos. Why is it a Reshus HaYachid L'Shabbos? Because it's fenced. Now you have to remember also, you have the Beis Osayim, that's not Mukav Lediro. So Midrabanan, it's also not a full-fledged Reshus HaYachid. Maybe it's because it's less than Sosayim, but it's for Shabbos and the Ikar is L'Tuma. But the Im Roy Mukefes. But if it was not enclosed, Hadehi Reshus HaYachid L'Tuma Bulbad. You see, he's showing you in the opposite direction. If it's not fenced, what do you call that, Shmuley? You remember? A large area. You don't have there's no roads of 16 amas. You don't have Kiyotz Mitzrayim. That's a Carmelist. That's a typical Carmelist. But during the Yemais Shamim, since people are not going to have the chutzpah to go through as a shortcut because they're going to ruin other people's property, then it has a din of a Reshus HaYachid L'Tumah. Even though it's not fenced, even though for Hilchas Shabbos, it's not a Reshus HaYachid. Ubika she'avru allow Yemais Shamim. So then, once it passed, Hareik Reshus HaYachid L'Tumah, Afilu B'Yemais HaChamon. Why is that? Because prior to harvesting, you for sure won't walk through there. Anyways, the Chama, Mishetei Akar Atzvua Meteicha. The Yemais Shamim, Mishetei D'Revi Yashniya, which is we know Rosh Chodesh Kislev. Now, another detail. Bein hu igulim shalanovim lazugim. So grapes are stored prior to them being brought to the grape press, where they're going to be crushed. Right, that is the igulim. That's the igulim. The zugim is after you crush the grapes and you remove their juices. So there is the shemarim left. You have this mass that's left, and they were placed in a zug, in a pile. So the physical place between the igulim and the zugim, Reshus Harabim L'Tumah, because more than two people go there. Halacha Zayin, Kerem Shelifnei Haboitzim. So you have people that are harvesting grapes. Lifnei Haboitzim means the place prior to it being harvested. In other words, no one goes there. Same concept. Then it has a din of Reshus HaYachid. It's menschlichkeit. He's writing here in the footnote, whoever's using a chayenu, people didn't go in there also because people are going to think you're a ganaf. What are you doing there? But the moment, when the harvester passed, then the Reshus Harabim L'Tumah. Oh, no, the shetach that was already harvested, people were not uncomfortable to go through, even though it's private property. Again, it's not an area where we say no one is there. People are there. But even then, only in other words, if it serves as a shortcut, we don't say any time just because it's not harvesting season, just because you're not going to ruin things. People always walk through other people's fields. It says, yeah, if there's an advantage to the public, then we presume if it's a shortcut. So there we say, shame, Reshus HaYachid L'Shabbos, kachem Reshus HaYachid L'Tumah. Very clear. Halacha Ches. Yesh Mekoymos she'ein Reshus HaYachid L'Shabbos. We already had one example before of the bika. That's not mukav. He's going to give more examples. Afal pikein. In other words, afal pikein, they will be at Reshus HaYachid L'Tumah. The point is, B'pnei she'ein ha'am mishtamshim behem ve'elohein ho'ilonois on the tree. If I climbed on a tree and I have a suffix, that's great. Chayde Reshus Harabim, holes that are in the walls of a Reshus Harabim. Afal pi she'ein b'em arba'a al arba'a keitzad ilan shoyim b'Reshus Harabim, and there's tum on the tree, and I climbed the tree, and I have a suffix naga, suffix naga. You know what we say? We say suffix tamei Reshus HaYachid sveika tamei. Hichnes yodai in that hole that's right open to the Reshus Harabim. Sheyesh by tuma suffix naga sveika tamei. If it doesn't have arba, what is that, Danny? Hamakam ptur. Just taste. Halacha tes. Chanushi tameya. You have a store that's impure. Now the store is a Rishus HaYachid. Let's go with that. But it's open to the Rishus HaRabim. Safek nichnas, safek le nichnas. I'm standing into the Rishus HaRabim. Sveika Tohar. Shekol Chonus is like a sheretz. I take it back. A store is not a Rishus HaYachid. Shekol HaChonus is like a sheretz at a Rishus HaRabim. Since the Rishus HaRabim is surrounding the store, so I have a suffix if I touch the sheretz or not. Same thing over here. Shesafik Magoy will be tar because of the rule. Safek Tamei b'Rishus HaRabim Sveika Tar. But Abed. Okay, I take it back. This store has a din of Rishus HaYachid. Now, why will the store have a din of Rishus HaYachid? I don't know. Wasn't Macy's. Okay. So if I'm standing on the street and I put my hand into one of them, or I have a doubt whether I entered one of them, I'm under the Rishus HaRabim. But if you have two stores and I enter to one of them, verstehst? In other words, I'm in a store, I'm in a Rishus HaYachid now. And now, Safek La Tamei Nichnas, now we say Sveika Tamei. Because Shazet, Safek Rishus HaYachid, because the Chanus has a din of Rishus HaYachid. That's the type of Chanus we're talking about. In other words, if I am in the Rishus HaRabim, when I'm questioning that I enter, that I not enter, so we're going to paskin not based on where the Tuma is. Where I am, I'm in the Rishus HaRabim. If I'm in a store, Safek Tamei Rishus HaYachid.
Why don't we say that the store has more than 3 people that come shopping?
I don't know,
there?
Danny. That's what I don't know. I just said that. I don't know. We must be speaking. I'm sure it doesn't go to today's stores. Does
it mean that the 3 people have to be there when you're there? Maybe you went to the store and you're the only guy shopping there.
Like that's what Dovi asked before. Forget about that. If I'm on La Cienega Boulevard at 4 a.m. in the morning for the few moments that there's no one there, it doesn't matter. I'm in a Rishus HaRabim. It must be a certain type of chanus that is considered a Rishus HaYachid. Very few people are there. It's retail and Tavshin Pei Gimel here in Beverly Hills. Nishkin Neshama. It's not a Kaddish. It finished. It's dead. Become Bimoisag Shamim. Sheyesh Ba Sadais Harbe. In other words, guys, what did we learn? Bimoisag Shamim. No one goes there. No one goes there. They're going to ruin other people's planted produce. Uba, so the achas, that's Tameya, but achas tohira. V'oma nechnasni labikadu, ve'eni deim nechnasni lo'isoro nechnasni. Sveikoi tomei, because the moment I'm in the biko, if the bika has a din of Rishus HaYachid, I don't care that I'm not in the sod, I'm in the bika. Shesafik Rishus HaYachid, I feel a safik bia will be tomei. Halachi. Mokim hoya, mokim shoy Rishus HaYachid. And nothing changed other than it became a Rishus HaRabim. Then it became a Rishus. I'll give you a great example. There was a property that belonged to a Yachid. And when it belonged to a property with a house, a building, no one enters. And it was sold to the city. Then the city sold it back to a person. Nothing changed other here. People had the right to change the status. So the din is anachanami. Kishur Rishus HaYachid Sveikoi Tamei. Shur Rishus HaRabim Sveikoi Tamei. So let's say the reselling was done at 4:20 p.m. and you have a suffix. They'll ask you, what time did the suffix happen? Did it happen at this time or at that time? Halacha Yudal. Anything that is situated in a Rishus HaRabim, Harei Rishus HaRabim, Ketzad Rambam explains what he means. Kupa b'Rishus HaRabim, and even though the kupa is high, 10 tfachim, and for so many dinim, you have mechitzos 10 tfachim high, right? But I'm going to give the example of a sheretz in here. And there's tuma inside the kupa. You're standing outside the box. You're not in the box. A suffix naga, suffix le naga. In other words, suffix hichnes yadoi oiloi. Then we say sveikoi tar. That's the meaning that since it is b'Rishus HaRabim, however, hichnes yadoi l'toicha, and now suffix naga, suffix naga, that's different. Because my hand was for sure in there. Not only that was did I touch or not, they were inside this kupa, Sveikoi Tamei. Another case. Hoisa kefisha, nesuna al ksefoi. He teaches over here, there was a large stone container. We're saying a stone container because stone containers are not makabel tum. Kikar truma karuch b'siv, and inside the stone keli there was a kikar of truma, and even better, it was wrapped in something that is not makabel tuma, whether it is some sort of bark of a tree or whether it was a nayod. We already learned this. A nayod is not makabel tuma, and v'nosim l'toicham, and now. Safek noga bo acher. Maybe someone else stuck his hand in there and touched it. Safek noga. Where's the guy standing? The guy standing on a rishus harabim. So what? But it's the person, and it's on the person. That's called safek. That's called safek rishus hayach. Sveikoi tame. Halacha yud beis. Chamor rishus harabim, and here again the chamoid itself is higher than 10 tefachim, and there's tuma on top of this donkey, and you are standing in the rishus harabim. So if it's safek naga, safek naga, same thing. You're standing in the rishus harabim, sveikoi tot. But if your hand is over it, safek naga, sveikoi tame. Okay. Chein selam. Hamunach b'rishus harabim, and the cell itself is going to tefachim. It should be like the chamor. For some reason, it's not exact, similar but not exact. And there's tuma on it, and you standing in the rishus harabim, safek naga, sveikoi tahar, like by the case of the chamor. But here is where there's a little bit of a difference that all of the achrayim are speaking about. Allah b'roish haselam. The Rambam doesn't say pashat yodoi al hasela. And by the Chamor, the Rambam didn't say that you have to climb up the donkey. The Rambam just spoke about Pashat Yodei ala Chamor, and that's the question. But let's go. The concept we get. All of Rosh Hashanah. Then Safek Naga, Safek Naga, Sveikoi Tamei. And Chavra Yidin, final halacha Yud Gimel. Hoya Zov Roichav al Chamoirei. And Bezer Roichav al Chamoirei. Vaday Zov. Here they are in movement, right? That's going to be the big cloud. That's the Simon, I said, B'toiv, Kol Shehu Derech Hiluch Haytor, where everyone is in movement. They are both moving. And while we're moving, Safek Naga Bazov, Safek Le Naga. Make no mistake, the Rambam is writing this, I'll say that if the Chamoir is 10 Tvachim or higher, what did we say? We said that that's considered a Rishus HaYachid, which means that if I'm on my Chamoir and I'm going by you and your Chamoir, one of us is Tamei, or there's a suffix, you could argue that's a suffix coming with a shus hayachid. They're going to be taught. Another case, the Rambam is going to give a few cases. Case number 2. Tinoi Tomei, that's Murkav and the Ksefer Shalaviv. V'tinoi Tahar, Murkav al Ksefer Shalaviv. We also learned before that something on the person is already considered the shus hayachid. And V'holchu Zebat Tzadzeh. While they are in movement, Safek Naga, Safek Le Naga. Case number 3. Similar, Chavila al Kseifa, I have a bundle on my back. And there is Roik Mudbak Bakoiso, Safek Naga, Safek Le Naga, while I walked by. Guys, that will be the key. And case number 4, final case, Kalim, utensils that are Shtuchim Rishus Harabim. They're spread out over the Rishus Harabim, but how much over? Lamayla Masara. Again, all of them share the commonality that one would use the general rule, Safek Tamei B'Rishus Hayachid Sveikoi Tamei. And Bahatlama Oived, and while he was walking, the doubt was whether he moved it or whether he didn't move it. And all of these cases are called Tahar. Why? Because that's the cloud that calls Shuhu B'Darech Chiluchei Tahar. And with this we say Mazel Tov, Rich Rachmana de Sayon, and God willing, even though we learned a lot already about Tumas Eicholin, tomorrow start Tumas Eicholin. How much we'll miss you. Hadran Allah, God willing, we'll come back. We're not running away from this. Can't wait. Can't wait, Danny. Danny, it's good. It's good. You're going to miss it. You're going to miss it. Listen to me. It's like two people in the beginning, they were not the biggest chaverim. They become chaverim later. They cannot live without each other. That's where this is going. Tumantar. You'll see.
You took out the wrong guy about that.